session for February. Oops, right. Thank you, Brad. Welcome. I call to order our work session, City Council work session for February 15th, 2022. Two topics is Festival Plaza update and then Highway 99 pedestrian crossing. So start off with Kristen and Festival Plaza update.
Hi, so I am very excited about this project. I think that we all are ready to see something different as we look across City Hall than a gravel lot that's used for parking. So we're thrilled to have Kurt with us here tonight, Kurt Lango from Lango Hansen Architect. We've been going through a process, a design committee review process, and looking at different options for the plaza. We involved representatives from Cruise in Sherwood, from the Robin Hood Festival, the Cultural Arts Commission, the Parks Board, Council President Rosner, and Mayor Keith Mays were also on the committee group, and we met 3 times and looked at different plans. So Kurt's gonna walk you through the design and what we have come up with, and like I said, we're excited to share it with you.
Thank you, Kristen. Let's see, I have the presentation. Should I share my screen?
That'd be great.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So how do we know Kurt before today? Did we already give that a little nugget of info?
Oh, I'm sorry. Kurt also helped us with the design of Cannery Square.
Yes, and even before that, a couple of years before that, I also worked a little bit on the master plan for the streetscape in downtown Sherwood as well. So a very long history with Sherwood, and certainly excited to be invited back to help guide this process. I think very important process, certainly. First time, or when I moved to Portland and visited Sherwood, it was, I think, in the mid 90s, 2000. I'm not quite sure if the Robin Hood Theater was still there then, but I can remember going through the master planning process for the streetscape and it being a gravel lot then. And certainly I've attended Cruise in of the Robin Hood Festival over the years. And so I've been at the site a number of times. As Kristen mentioned, we've gone through a process and looking at ways. I would like to think about it as creating a festival plaza that still has parking in it. And certainly as we've looked at the designs and talked to members of the committee, the idea is that if we are able to upgrade the materials, still a parking lot, but it may allow for other festivals to occur there throughout the year, or perhaps even bringing part of your Saturday market there as well. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the site right now, right across from your library in City Hall, bounded by Pine Street and Southwest First, and then the alley, Oregon Street, runs here. North is kind of pointed, kind of a 45-degree angle to the kind of upper left. Currently, there are about 20 parking spaces that you have right now. And I'm sure you all know those kind of large evergreen, kind of overgrown evergreen trees that are here on the south side. As well. Also the Robin Hood Theater here. The first thing that we did, because we know that we're going to have to go through a land use process, is, and it's going to be a type 4 land use, a conditional land use review, is to better understand the story that we tell as we go through this process, and how, even though it's a festival first, because it functions as a parking lot, what are the codes that we would have to do in order to upgrade the landscape or trees? And are there ways to do that in the new design that both allows the plaza to and the festivals to occur, but also parking as well? So this shows you, if we were just to consider it a parking lot, what we'd have to do. The landscape buffers on both sides, trees really that kind of rim the parking lot as well. So we took that into kind of the design. And what you see right here is actually we looked at 3 different kind of options, and like all kind of master planning efforts, we took kind of the best parts of each one to create this master plan drawing right here. So again, Pine Street kind of up to the north, southwest first here, and then the alleyway. So the first thing you'll notice is that with the parking lot itself, we're using paving to kind of differentiate each of the parking stalls, and we'll still have one ADA stall as well. We have about 17 parking spaces right now, and I think I mentioned there's about anywhere from 18 to 20, depending on how people park every day there. We still kind of maintain kind of an entrance, ways to get in and out of the parking lot, as well as access to the alley. The one thing you'll notice right here is that using the City of Sherwood codes, what we were able to do is take the parking lot, which is really almost kind of uses this entire area, and actually shift it farther down. There's an existing street light right here, which we are retaining. We'll take a look at it. We may move it just slightly to get it out of the way of cars kind of entering the parking lot. But what it does do is it allows for this, I think, a very kind of generous walkway, seating area that is right adjacent to your existing sidewalk. And this is where cars are parking here right now. What's really nice about that is it gives an additional buffer to, when there isn't a festival, cars parking in here, but also captures the space both for people to be there on a day-to-day basis. And there we have some perspectives that show seating, but it also would allow you to set up 10 by 10 tents in this area as well. So very kind of multifunctional. And then as we go around the plaza area, we'll still have green areas for planting on both sides. And then you'll see in a perspective that we're looking at doing an art wall here that provides a little bit of screening. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. So this gives you kind of a bird's eye view that shows you the existing sidewalk, that kind of smaller kind of promenade and seating areas, an opportunity for an art fence where we could perhaps have a local craftsperson, artist actually kind of create a design that helps provide a screen between our site and then what's happening over at Clancy's. And then you see these kind of tall poles. We had a number of members on our committee for the festivals, talking about what the electrical needs are for the different events. And what we're hoping to do is get double duty out of those poles, because right now you have to set up those 30 by 40 tents, bring them in, take them down. The idea here is that perhaps there's kind of a larger canopy piece that could provide shade or a shelter from inclement weather that then would be attached to those poles themselves. And here you see those smaller tents. And if you go down to more of kind of an eye level view, this shows you perhaps there's ways that we can begin to bring some of the stonework that's over at Cannery Square over into this plaza as well. And then this is where the existing sign is. And there was a lot of discussion about the desire, if there is more of a marquee, is this the place to have it? Would it be better served someplace else in downtown? But the important thing was that we introduced some sort of interpretive signage that really talks about the history of the site, of the Robin Hood Theater, and that could be done in a variety of ways. This is a view with the tents kind of within that promenade. You see the art fence kind of in the background here. And then this is a view looking down the existing sidewalk. We know that we would like to use some sort of paver whether it's exactly like what was used over at Cannery Square, or perhaps it's a different one. And it may be that we consider within the drive aisle or some of the parking areas using a colored concrete versus a paver as well. But this gives you an idea of some of the seating areas that we'll have within there. And then they work perfectly for having tents that could fit in between those gathering spaces. And then one last view, and again, I think this may, just by virtue of it, vehicles driving over it every day, may be more of a colored concrete than a paver, but it does give you the idea of the lights. And it may be that some of these lights provide lighting for the parking lot or evening events, and then others allow for festival lighting as well. So we really want to create a lot of flexibility in the design. And then this gives you an idea of how those tent structures could work over the plaza itself. We are just now kind of finishing up the schematics on this, and we are getting ready to prepare the material for the land use drawing or the land use submittal. There will be a public hearing as part of that process. We're immediately hoping to go into construction documents, and the goal is to be able to get this constructed by the Cruisin' Festival of next year. A fairly aggressive timetable, but we're hoping everything falls into place in order to make that deadline. So that kind of gives you a brief summary of kind of where we're at right now, and certainly be happy to answer any questions or comments that you may have.
Russell? Russell?
Yes, thank you. Kurt, thank you so much for coming. I think the design looks really, really cool. And I had a couple of questions that you mentioned. I know that someone from Robin Hood was on there and Cruisin' as well. I'm thinking about like the beer garden, which is normally in this location. And because if we have inclement weather, we can like zipper it down so the wind doesn't go through there, the rain doesn't get on the participants. Mm-hmm. I don't see that as necessarily happening unless they put the tent underneath those. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, how do those 10 by 10 tents anchor to the ground if there's brick down there? Did you have those discussions? Thanks.
Great questions. Let me maybe answer the last one first. I think there are ways that we can kind of mount slightly below the brick fasteners, where it essentially has like a removable cap, so that when those tents do go in, I think you can fasten that. So that's a detail we didn't really talk about, but I think that's something that we should definitely consider.
Can I jump in there? Typically, people use sand weights.
Okay, sand weights.
Type of tents, and like at Robin Hood and other festivals along the street, they have these rings that weight with sand, so that would still work. You wouldn't need an anchoring device necessarily.
That's great.
Yeah. Right. I just want to know if that had been talked about. So thanks.
Yeah, no, we didn't talk about that, and I think you also bring up another good point about the wind. We didn't really get into that detail. I think anything that we're doing here wouldn't necessarily preclude those tents from going back into the space. We thought there might just be another option in order to provide some shade protection during the summer months.
It looks beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, the hope is they won't need the tents for those two events. Is the hope that the canopies would replace the need for renting and installing and taking down those tents for at least the two marquee events that are happening in Old Town.
Yeah.
Tim, your hand is up next.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that when we were talking about this, one of the other things we talked about was in the planters, and this depends on LLCC and what the rules are, but we could put some nice like wrought iron fence around this. So when we do have an event where they're shutting it down for a beer garden, it limits the amount of that ugly chain link fence that we have to put in. If we
Right.
really wanted to get have fun with it, we could have removable sections that could be pulled in and out that match the other fence and make it look really nice. I know Public Works was a little worried about where we store that, but hey, we could put a little storage space in the new Public Works building. For it. but we talked about that too in terms of trying to make it look really nice, even when there's an event. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I hate those chain link gross fences that they put up for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Doug?
Sorry, I was on mute. I was just gonna follow up on, I like the idea of having a kind of a permanent perimeter fence, you know, an artistic looking one that Tim just mentioned around the planter areas, and then removable ones around the opening areas. I think that would be a really nice addition if it can be budgeted for. I'm not worried about storage. We can find storage. If along the lines of, you know, I'm thinking back to every Robin Hood festival I've been to, and there's never been like tents with sides. They've always just been overhead tents. So I'm not super worried about that for those months. I guess my next question is this something we would see potentially renting out to private parties if people wanted to rent, or, you know, like Clancy's wanted to have an event and, you know, they wanted to rent the space? Is that something we would consider?
Well, that's a policy decision for council, but it's certainly possible. Yeah.
Just as far as from a design standpoint, if we're considering things like that, because I could see there being some potential revenue opportunities there. And then, of course, if they want to bring in a tent, if they're doing something in February or March and anyone wants to bring in a tent with sides on it, then they can rent that and put it up, as long as they don't damage the plaza. So
yeah,
it looks like we're not keeping the existing sign. What's the plan with that? I know people will ask.
It's non-conforming, so that's already so
we can't keep it even if we wanted to, because we're redeveloping the site. Yeah. Okay.
And then but can incorporate the history in combination of the interpretive area and then the artistic wall.
Yeah.
So there's lots of opportunities.
We can auction it.
There you go. Kim, your hand was up when they went down.
It was because Tim answered, or Tim and Russell both talked about the question I was going to have. So,
okay.
It's all good.
Other thoughts? I know Tim's hand's up again, but
Keith knows what I'm going to say, so he's trying to delay me.
no, I'm just letting other people have feedback. I don't want to let people.
I think it looks amazing, and what a cool addition to the downtown area. What a cool highlight that would be. It's really quite amazing. Nice job, you all.
Yeah, and there's obviously some refinements as we talked about, and the feedback of really maybe leaning in more about fencing, I think is worth more conversation. Kristen and I talked more about on the parking spaces, especially the ones abutting the landscaping, to make sure that there is extra room on those parking spaces, because those are raised beds.
Right.
So that they're functional, so that there's an extra 12 or 18 inches so that people can still open their doors and it be functional.
Mhm.
Lots of artistic opportunities with that wall, with the potential of, custom bollards, interpretive stuff.
I love it. I mean, if depending on how expensive it is, the wall could incorporate, for example, like the drama, tragedy, those two masks that you see sometimes that could be like somehow in the wall, or it could be, there's so many things. I mean, the whole, maybe not the Egyptian theme that used to be inside of the Robin. I've been here long enough. I remember going to see Star Wars movies for like $1. It was so great. It was very cool. It was very, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm
Renee?
glad we're keeping the parking aspect. Just this article that the Gazette wrote got around a few social media websites. There was all this concern about, wait, we need the parking. And then somebody would clarify, no, it's still going to be available for parking when it's not being used, blah, blah, blah. So I think that was some concern of people. So I think we're good there.
Yeah, awesome. Renee?
So are we building an additional wall, or is it backing up to Clancy's? Is that, I guess I'm having trouble visualizing that.
So it's just so the current trees and concrete planter, that's all going away.
Mhm.
And then we'll go to the property line of that lot with the project. And then there will be just a decorative fence that you can see through on some level,
Mhm.
create a little bit of a visual barrier along with some plantings, some vertical plantings.
And I think I probably know the answer to this, but I'm assuming the canopies would not be up all summer. It would be a up and down, depending on the event type of a thing, correct?
Well, we have to, it's a policy decision. So it
Okay.
could be up for, a couple months or 3 months or some stretch, or up and down.
I didn't know if they could park the cars in there with the canopies up or not. So.
Yeah.
All right.
They can, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. It looks great.
Awesome. Sean?
Sorry, there we go. Trying to unmute. Yeah, so I actually had the opportunity to see this at the Cultural Arts Commission's meeting, so I don't have a ton of questions, but I just want to say that, yeah, I really like the design, the look. I mean, it's obviously an upgrade over the mud-filled bog that we have there right now. It's a bit of an eyesore in the heart of our old town, so I loved this concept. I love the trees. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Just my concern is just making sure that we've got sight lines around that corner for pedestrians. I know that that's got a lot of kids and people crossing there to the back and forth to the library. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. And the other question I had, and I apologize, I know you had listed off the names of the stakeholders that were consulted on these plans. Was Clancy's included in that list of people that we talked to about these plans?
We have not talked to them specifically. They weren't involved in the design committee.
Okay.
I mean, they were, last I had heard, they were supportive of improvements to the lot and to the
Sure.
area, and excited about that, but I have not spoken with them directly.
Okay. Just, it might not be a bad idea to bring them in a little bit at some point just to get some feedback, I think would be my thoughts. I know they've been vocal in the past on some other city issues, so maybe early rather than later. But yeah, other than that, I think it looks fantastic and really, really excited about this. So thanks for all the hard work.
Thanks, Sean. Tim?
So I just want to circle back to the sign real quick. And I might be a lone opinion on this, but that theater, and I think Russell mentioned it, was, that was kind of iconic when it was downtown before it was torn down years ago. And I know a lot of people that love that current sign. I would love to see something similar. The current sign is old and it's going to fall apart, but something similar with that we can still have messages up. It's a perfect corner because that's kind of a main intersection in town for people to see it. So I really think we should consider putting something there as a reminder of what used to be there. So I just wanted to mention that. And I know it's non-conforming, Keith, but we are the city council. We have ways of dealing with that. But I wanted to put that out there as continued discussion. And I think it's, as we do public outreach with the plans, I think we should definitely ask the community that question.
And in the committee, we discussed where would be the right spot for informational type stuff, and bouncing amongst here or closer to the art center. And so I think, yeah, there's certainly more conversation to be had.
Other than, and then the only other thing I wanted to mention is we talked about I talked to Clancy's about the work we were doing. They were generally supportive when I talked to Alan about it. They would love to see a common garbage area, much like what you would see at in a shopping mall or something like that. But there's some serious issues around how would we make that work in terms of getting trucks in and out. That was the only feedback that Alan had from Clancy's on that. But I think as long as we're not taking the parking away, people are very supportive based on what I'm hearing so far out in the community. But we definitely want to go through our outreach.
Yep.
Anyways, and then I just want to say great job. Everyone's done a wonderful job on this. I think it looks great. I love the idea of the pavilion tents. I think that'll create a really unique signature space in our downtown area that'll set us apart from other communities around us, which is awesome. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tim. Doug?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. I was just kind of looking at some overhead images while we were talking here, and based on some of those, I mean, parking wise, it looks like, I mean, it's 9 across, either an old versus new. So it's really almost 1 for 1. We're not, I mean, we're taking what used to be 2 spots and turning it into 1 ADA spot.
Yep.
But overall, like, we're really, really on parity. We're not really losing a lot of parking, which I was kind of actually expecting coming out of this. I'm pleasantly surprised to see that's not the case. My initial thought,
having it marked so people truly know where they park, so it's optimized.
Yeah. My initial hope, I guess, before seeing this was that there'd be some sort of like kind of built-in raised stage area, for events. But I'm also not sure how practical that is for 1 or 2 times a year to have this, space dedicated to that. So the only other thought I had, one thought and then one question, 2 thoughts and a question. So the row of trees internal to the space, may need to be maybe lower shrubs, because I'm envisioning like a beer garden setting, at Robin Hood, that may create like sightline issues to the stage. It's out in the street for people, or it's going to certainly limit the seating areas that are visible to the stage. So maybe a different planting plan for that internal row of trees versus the external row. Again, that's all stuff that can be figured out later. But the other thought I had was, along that, if we're losing all those trees along that border with Clancy's and the other building there, I feel like we really need to make sure we have a pretty good, like, site obstructed, whether it's a fence or trees or both, or a solid wall with a mural on it. Like, I want to see something really creates a backdrop, and kind of creates a clear delineation between those sites. I think it'd feel very weird for that to be open or open-ish.
Mhm.
And then my question is to the mayor: Are we naming the plaza after you, or the pedestrian bridge?
Oh, jeez.
Since they're both things you've been pushing for.
Well, we'll name the statue of Keith should be in the.
We put the Keith statue? Okay.
Yeah.
They're all just killing me. I believe the definite people like Robin Hood.
So it's Robin Hood Plaza.
That is.
Or the bridge. You want the bridge. I see you're aiming big. You want the bridge.
Honestly, you guys are just killing me.
Robin Hood.
Mayor,
Plaza.
can I ask a couple
Awesome.
questions?
Yep.
Yeah. So first, I kind of agree. I love the concept of that art wall. I kind of agree with Doug. Maybe it's some kind of a wall, but the fence is in front of it just enough that maybe you have some cool lighting behind it, LED lighting, so we can actually throw some light on the wall and create kind of an effect. And in a sense, maybe create a stage-like background. I don't know. I just thought if we were a little more creative, not too expensive, it might be easy to do. But I don't know about having a see-through straight into Clancy's, but that's just a comment. And then the other thing was, is the alleyway, is that part of this, the continuation of the Oregon Street sort of concept, or is that separate?
So we did talk about that, ways of improving it with lighting, with a something to be able to temporarily or semi-permanently block off the bottom half, that you might not, but people have rights to use this alley for business parking.
Yeah.
So about the biggest opportunity is really below what you can see, but definitely lighting, and then potentially some removable bollards.
Cool.
Yeah, I
Russell?
still think I like Tim's
Thank
idea
you.
from, sorry, Russell.
That's fine.
The garbage.
Well, I like that too, but I also like the idea of continuing that pedestrian kind of pathway that runs along City Hall, alongside of City Hall, down this alley, and then eventually all the way to Memorial Park. But that doesn't have to be done now, right? It can be done later. So
Yeah, it's a great vision. It really is a great vision.
Well, yeah,
And I don't like the idea of having garbage on the site. You know, I think Tim's right. I don't like the look of a common area garbage. And as far as the sign is, you know, I loved Robin Hood Theater. I don't love the Robin Hood Theater sign. I mean, it's a pole. It's non-conforming. It's okay if it goes away, but maybe somehow we enshrine the like Doug mentioned, maybe Robin Hood Square or something. So it's clearly sort of an homage. And then we have those, as Kurt mentioned, those informational / signs that talk about the history of the square. I love all of that. So thanks.
Great. Anything else? Then awesome. Well, thank you, Kurt. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thank you so
Kristen.
much.
This is exciting.
Yes.
Next, we are moving on to Highway 99 pedestrian crossing presentation.
Yes, thank you. And I think I am starting, and actually this is the Kurt night because our consultant is also Kurt, a different spelling, different firm, very different person. But are you sharing your presentation or am I sharing the presentation?
I can do that, Julia. If
That would
that's-
be great if you could do that.
Hopefully I have the chops on the tech side. So
You probably are better than me. So I'm going to just start briefly with introductions, or have Kurt Vanderzanden from KPFF briefly introduce his team, and then I'm going to kind of talk about what we're talking about this evening. But Kurt, do you want to introduce who's here from your team?
sure. Thank you, Julia. Yeah. So I'm Kurt Vanderzanden. I'm a project manager for the KPFF team, working to develop this exciting project for the city of Sherwood. With me tonight, I've got Craig Totten with KPFF, who is our lead bridge engineer. And John, thank goodness you got into the room. So John Brashears with Architectural Applications is a bridge architect that we've worked with quite a bit over the last 10 to 15 years. And we also have Wes Shoger with us with Greenworks, who is our landscape architect lead for the project as well. So we're here to show you what we've done to date and look for some input from you as well.
And then also, not on camera, but here is Bob Galati with the city, who's kind of leading the project from the city's end. Not sure if he's going to show up in person or on camera or not, but he's here too, so he might be chiming in. Great. So if you want to go ahead and share your screen, Kurt, I just wanted to remind council kind of where we've been. We did the feasibility study in 2019, and we identified that it was in fact feasible to build a bridge in that general area. But through the feasibility study, it was identified that more study was needed to get the bridge off the ground, pun intended, including survey work, geotechnical work, and a lot more coordination and community outreach. Meanwhile, or after the feasibility study, we, and by we, I really mean council and Keith and Tim in particular, worked really hard to get state funding to help us with that bridge construction. And we did get some state lottery funds to help us with that. And we formed the new 2021 URA, which will also help us in construction of the bridge. And early on, we envisioned that the structure would likely be prefabricated with the intent to save on design costs, construction costs, as well as time to actually construct the structure. but we've also recognized that a significant design work was and is needed outside of the bridge structure itself, the ramps, the landings, making sure that the structures that the bridge was on are appropriately sized and designed and to be able to support the structure. Also identifying utility issues and conflicts and how those were going to be resolved. And we also needed to do community outreach to make sure that what we were going to be installing was something that the community would be excited about and want to see as a gateway into their community. And so we did an RFP and we selected KPFF to help us with the design of this bridge structure, this bridge project. And also when the mayor mentioned pedestrian bridge crossing, we're kind of referring to it now as Highway 99 pedestrian bridge project, because we feel like that is more clear to the public and everybody that we're building a bridge, we're not building a crossing. So if you have strong feelings about that, please let us know, but that's kind of how we're referring to it. And what I'm going to turn it over to Kurt here in just a second to talk to you about where we're at now. But really what we're hoping tonight is to give you an update on where we're at, what we've done, and get some input from the council on that, as well as to kind of help us maybe take some things off the table for our online open house that we're going to be beginning soon. So that's a lot. Sorry, I spoke really fast. I'm going to turn it over to Kurt to take it away from here.
Great. Thank you, Julia. I'm assuming everybody's seeing my screen at this point.
We're seeing it in not presentation mode, but I think that's
yeah. I haven't quite figured that piece out without having both.
That's okay.
On this.
Everybody will get a preview. That's okay.
So basically, here's the agenda for this evening. Julia, thanks for the intros and for setting the meeting goals. We'll talk a little bit more about the project background, talk about our current work efforts. We'll spend a fair amount of time talking about a couple of alternative alignments and landing scenarios that we've developed through this effort. We have multiple bridge types that we will talk through, and we'll also preview our alternatives comparisons that will build into this next phase of work. We'll talk more about next steps. And then we will have some time at the end of this for just questions and answers. So with that, let's see. Oh, actually, I should back up real quick. Sorry about that. So currently, from what Julia said, we were hired to essentially carry the design on this through alternatives analysis and 30% design. So that's our current scope of work. That's what we're working toward. We were really building off of the work that was done in the 2020 Pedestrian Connector Project report that was completed by, I think DKS was involved in that one, who's also part of our team. So what we're really doing is building on that earlier effort to develop and evaluate alternative alignments and structure types, and to help the city come up with the preferred alternative for final design, permitting, and construction. Through this effort, we're taking a much more detailed look at the advantages and disadvantages, as well as potential risks associated with the different alternatives. This will also include a much closer look at potential property impacts, utility conflicts, connections to existing facilities, and potential permitting challenges. So tonight we're here to present the results of this early work with the goal of identifying concerns that you may have and the public through an upcoming online open house. With that, I will jump into the preliminary alignment work. So we've developed three alternative alignments. I would just call them north, mid, and south. As we started looking at this, we realized that there were some advantages to different locations for this crossing. So alignment option A is probably the most direct route. It would include essentially a system of ramps coming up along in front of the YMCA. It would basically go to structure from there all the way across the roundabout and then land on the high school site. One thing I do want to point out is we also looked at a sub-alternative that would have actually brought the bridge down with, on the highway side of the power lines to try to see if we could minimize impacts to the overhead utilities. At this point, we've done enough work to know that it could be done. I'm just not so sure that it would serve as a very direct route between the Y and the high school. So with these graphics, you can see essentially what the profile of the bridge would look like itself. And we've also included in the graphics a look at how the different scenarios relate to the YMCA. So what you see here is a section cut through here. We basically had some concerns as we were working through these as to whether we would be obstructing views out of second story windows within the Y. So that's what you see there. We do have alternative landing configurations that Wes will talk about. We've also included essentially, lengths of path on grade versus path on structure versus the bridge itself. So with that, let's see, Wes, you are up to talk about the landing scenarios.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. So yeah, just a little primer on landings. We need them on both ends of the bridge, and they obviously take you from the bridge to the ground. And, it could be a series of ramps or stairs or both. And so, they're all going to be accessible for all these options that we're talking about. But, there's some things to look out for is it less than 5% slope means you don't have to have any sort of landing requirement along the route. It can just be a straight paved pathway versus if it's greater than that, up to about 8.3%, you need to have intermediate landings, little flat plains where you have some stoppage along the way. So just a little note on that. And, in particular, the landings at 99W were probably the most challenging because we need to get up, in some cases more than 20 feet. And so that's, equating to, plus 300 feet of walkway to get up from the ground to the bridge. So they're pretty significant impacts. And so this one right here, I'll get into the specific option for this. This is looking at option alignment A, and this was just starting at the intersection, working its way all the way up to the bridge alignment. And we did two options. Both of them are pretty similar, but this one is just looking at it going along the right-of-way edge, just to minimize some of that impact in the right-of-way. You can go to the next slide, Kurt. Again, this is very similar to the last one, but this was just maybe playing off some sort of undulation of the pathway to make it a little bit more, I guess you could say, interesting. And some of these landings, they're generally shown, the intent of them was to maybe see how they could play into the bridge architecture, which we haven't really, finally decided on. We'll talk about later, but just keep in mind that there's certain things that can kind of change with these, but they're giving you a gesture of the design. And again, this is a less than 5% slope. And it's important to note on the alignment A is you're going northward, the roadway is going down, but we're up at a high point right here. So we don't really need to have a very steep walkway to get up to the bridge. It needs to be, long enough, but it's not as steep as some of the other options. And this is how it touches down near the school side. There's some potential to kind of hit that embankment up near the practice field and the stormwater facility. And you'll see there's kind of a plan view up in the upper left and then a perspective view of it in the lower right. Some of the landscape features, you'll see there's some walls indicated. That's just kind of, again, giving you a gesture of maybe how you would treat some of the landings here. There's a lot of different options you can do. We can do straight wall, you can do embankment. But we just kind of looked at it from a general idea. And then the orange massing, it's giving you like a visual impact. It's not meant to be, super literal, but it kind of shows you where stairs or ramps would be. So.
One thing to point out, Wes, that I don't think we mentioned is that the primary route would be here, but we are also looking at the ability of bringing in stairs to be able to allow a more direct connection down to the sidewalk on Kruger.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you, Kurt. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, there's, we want to make sure that the route to the school is approximate, and then we don't have people kind of landing on school property. So we're directing them down towards the sidewalk
I
for
think
all options.
having that second ramp is important, especially like on Friday night football games because that entrance into the stadium is going to be down on that side. So people aren't going to want to have double back.
Okay. All right.
I would say the same thing on the other end.
Yep.
If you go back up, can you go up a page, back a slide, one more, to the bridge overview of option A?
One more.
Yeah, right here. So at that 90-degree turn at the top of right there needs to be a staircase right there for people coming up that trail from Cedar Creek Trail. No, it goes along, there.
Okay.
So if there's a staircase at that bend, then those people don't have to walk all the way down to the corner and back.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we did not account for that one. So.
And then same thing at that round area at the other end of the bridge, there needs to be a staircase there as well.
There is on this one. Yeah, sorry. This one's kind of showing a general like landing. Here's how you get from the alignment. But yeah, the enlargements that I did showed a little bit more detail on that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, so let's go to option B. So option B was a little bit more of a direct route with a more of a curved approach to getting the bridge over to the same landing spot on the school property. This one, I believe, is actually the longest bridge span itself, just mostly because of the less direct route up and over. It does include a switchback ramp to basically make this work, and we'll get into that with the next page. And I do want to point this out is that we actually do have two different cuts here that show potentially these could be problematic for views coming out of the Y. Don't know how much of an issue that is, but it's something that we did want to make sure that we pointed out. So it essentially would likely have a pier someplace in this zone. We would basically probably have a shoulder span here and then land again on the school property itself. Let's see. And Wes, you are back up.
Yeah, so this is, again, the same kind of view that we were looking at it from option A. We have here showing the enlargement here, and you can kind of see a pretty big staircase going up there. And then we have a ramp system on the back end of it. The perspective view doesn't quite show that rampage, but you can see it on the plan view how it kind of wraps around. And you can see we also have included the Ymca expansion. It's kind of, again, as a massing object. And it's pretty tight. It's very close next to the building. And it's certainly something to consider in regards to just the placement of the landing. And we're getting up there 20 plus feet. It takes a lot to get up there,
I think it's pretty ugly.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be neutral, but there's an impact here. And this is even more impacting, bringing the stairs a little bit closer to the intersection and more up front. You can see the ramp on the front face of it. And so something definitely to consider is just the impact here for that.
Wes, I have a quick question on this. Yes. Yeah, on just comparing option A and option B, the table farther in the deck, you show option A as having as being a longer bridge overall than B. But when I look at the maps and kind of do some back of the envelope measuring, it seems like option B is actually longer with those ramps.
Option B definitely has a longer length with regard to the structure itself, the bridge itself. I have to go back and look at that and just verify those numbers.
Yeah, because with the switchback and all that, I just want to verify that, because I think that was one of the factors you were using for kind of high level cost, at least which is more expensive analysis.
Yeah, I'll make a note to double check those numbers.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and then just to clarify on the first option where we showed the landings, they don't necessarily need to be as long as that. We started at the intersection, obviously, and worked our way up to the bridge. You could push that back if you wanted to and make it a shorter run. It just made sense to start at the intersection and go that way. So you get a little bit of a longer number in essence for the pathway, but if that makes any sense.
And I only bring it up from 2 points of view. One is obviously the longer the overall structure, the higher the cost, just generically. And then secondly, it's just a perception thing with kids adults using the structure, right? The shorter it is, the more likely they're going to use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see. So that was B2. Let's see. Okay. So just a different scenario for the school property.
Yeah, similar concept. We're keeping the same like paths of travel, stairs go down, just the sidewalk, as well as the same accessible walkway, and some sort of landscape treatment to kind of soften the structure impact on the school side.
Okay, let's see. And last but not least, we have alignment option C. This one came about mostly just as a result of looking at possibly shortening the facility up to be able to land at the crossing here on Kruger. It does result in a significant reduction in the total length of the pathway. It does cause some complications for sure. One being that there is a property that basically comes up and it comes to a point here. So it would basically require some property acquisition here. Essentially, we would stay structured to here. This shorter piece here would likely be structured, but shorter spans. And we would basically be matching into grade along Kruger through this zone here, and then matching up at the existing crosswalk. Yeah, the question of whether this is desirable or not is something for folks to chime in on, of course. We did feel that with the lighter volumes on Kruger, it could be accommodated at grade, however, and still be a safe crossing.
But that's today. You shouldn't look at it as a today issue. You realize that there's 1,200 acres and are getting developed on that side, and
yeah,
a lot of it is south of Kruger and west of Kruger, or west of the high school.
Understood. Okay. Let's see. And we have a couple of different scenarios on the landings.
Yeah, so this site's quite a bit different in regards to A and B. You have a lot more room to kind of have more of to work with. I mean, other sites are pretty linear, but this option kind of looked at a whoop-de-woo path. I don't know how to describe it, but kind of circles around, and then there's different landscape treatments you can do to kind of soften that as well. There's potential connections into that cul-de-sac. I don't remember the exact street name, but there's also some connections we can make to the neighborhood. And as I understand it, this is a city-owned lot on the what's on the others?
No, yeah. I don't think this one is, Wes, actually.
It's not. Oh, excuse me. This one is then.
I have absolutely zero interest in this whole option, so I don't want to necessarily.
I agree. If it doesn't cross the whole roundabout, it's out for me. So
me too.
I'm a fourth on that one.
Yeah, same with me on that other side of Sunset. That doesn't work for me.
No.
Well, Kurt, you just got
sweet
some easier work to do. Yeah, and I think that obviously that feedback is exactly what we need. I think that we were looking at it and exploring it just to see where we were at from a cost and feasibility standpoint early on. There were more significant concerns, or still are some concerns with the PGE power lines that this alignment would have been easier to avoid. And so that's kind of why that was one of the reasons why that was on the table, plus the shortest distance. But it was, and I think most of you guys were here, all of you guys were here when we did the feasibility study. I think that the council, through the feasibility study process, specifically indicated being okay with a longer span to get the connections that we wanted. But so not surprised to hear your feedback, but
Is it not possible to start at this location, avoid the power lines, and then finish on the other side of the roundabout? Is there just not enough space? To get over the-
I think it's feasible. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely come in and still continue over Kruger here.
Yeah.
Trying to think.
There are issues with that area, if I recall, just because a portion of that is outside of the urban growth boundary. And so it becomes a little bit more problematic, not insurmountable. I mean, there's lots of challenges with this bridge in general, just that we're going to have to overcome. So that's not necessarily a fatal flaw, but that's just another thing that we'd have to think about and deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to looking at an alignment C variant as long as it crossed Kruger. If it doesn't cross Kruger, then it's, non-starter to me.
I think it absolutely has to cross Kruger. I would also add, though, I like the landing on the north side because it connects better into the trail systems and
Right.
and all the traffic that's going to come from that direction. And it's just one less street that a large percentage of folks have to cross to get to the bridge.
There is something appealing about this option if it was to cross all the way to Kruger. Did you call it a landing zone? I like the looks of that landing zone a little bit better than the other two. The other piece to consider is if it goes on to the property where the YMCA sits and they want to expand the facility, if they were to purchase it, then the landing zone is going to be encroaching on that. So just some things to
I
consider.
think that wasn't the previous plans considered.
Yeah. Right now, the landing configurations that are sketched up do take into account the expansion, which is shown here. At least the latest plans we could get our hands on, that's basically what they were showing.
And I think, and if I remember right, option A gives the most clearance.
Option A and B, sure.
Yeah.
Can you go back up to the option A overview again, real quick?
Sure. There you go.
So in front of the YMCA, that grade is, you made that ramp as long as possible.
Yeah, and there's still some fine tuning to be done there, of course. I mean, until we nail down exactly the structure type and ODOT clearance requirements for vertical, this could potentially shorten up a little bit. But right now we're basing it on, I think, the 5% maximum slope. And basically a fairly conservative estimate as far as clearances and structure depth.
And is there, so there's potential that the 90-degree turn right there where your cursor is could move, should move.
It could potentially slide a bit further to the south, yes.
Yeah.
Could it be more rounded, or is it going to be a 90?
The hard part of rounding this one is going to be the fact that that's basically where we're going to have one of the primary bridge supports. And
what if it was a round landing? So it's like a saucer. So it's on the pillar, but it's just a little more like kids can people kind of hang over, look over, wave at their friends in the YMCA at the top level doing the exercise bikes or whatever. I don't know.
Yep.
It looks like a future congestion point after a football game.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, actually that may make some good sense to maybe do just essentially build in a wider area to
like at the other end.
And a staircase.
Yeah. And forgot about staircase, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
a bungee jump. Yeah. All that.
I don't think ODOT would approve of that.
Yeah, maybe not.
And Wes, if I understood your presentation properly, this design keeps our ramps at that 5% or below, where the other two design may kick some of the ramps up to 8.3%.
Yeah, this one does, because you're going, the roadway is going downhill and you're already up pretty high at the start of the walkway at the intersection. So yes, I will say there were some options in C. That there's two other ones that we didn't get into. We don't need to if you don't want to, but they did have a potential to have a less than 5% walkway, just because you have so much room to work with. So
okay,
it starts on the wrong side of the road, so that's
Yeah, if it's dead in the water, then it's dead in the water. But yeah, the other two ones did have some of that. So
I'm perfectly comfortable with taking one off the table if that's the direction. So
this is
I'd
just
take
my
B off
thought.
the table too.
My thought on it is, given the timeframes that, we want to move on this as quick as possible, given inflation and construction cost increases. The less options we're evaluating, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
great. Are we ready to jump into structure types per chance?
Yep.
And this, I think as you get into this is where beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and what we I think really anticipate getting feedback from the public on. Obviously, the alignments, would be interesting and helpful. I'm sure we would get different thoughts and opinions on that. But what we really hope to get input from the public, as well as if there's anything, obviously, there's a few that I feel like are not in my, not beauty in my eyes, but you guys may disagree. But if there's anything that there's consensus to take off the table. But I think really with the open house that we're going to be doing, we really want to get input on these types of things, as well as details like like you guys talked about with the landings and things like that. But I think this is where the community is really going to feel the bridge, right? Is what it looks like.
Can we go back to B real quick before we jump into this?
Sure. Let's see. There we go. Oops, not quite there. There you go.
Go down to like the map that shows the side of by the YMCA.
Oh, these guys here.
Go down a slide. Yeah. Well, you can see it a little bit on those lower rights, but it really shows up on like.
I think he wants to see that. Yeah, the mass.
Yeah, like that. The next one particularly, but either one of these two, this one or the next slide, like the amount of like concrete there is really jarring to me. Like I'm like, this is not an option for me. It's this huge mass of cement that just looks really bad.
One thing to
Attractive.
one thing to point out is that isn't actually, Wes, you explained this much better than I did. I mean, so the intent is this doesn't necessarily have to be, a big concrete structure. This could be a lighter, structure itself. Wes, you want to try to take that?
yeah, I mean, so that you could infill that with maybe columns could be what's supporting the ramp system. Some of the options did have options for kind of grading on, one side, but yeah, if you did a wall system to hold up the ramp, you'd definitely be obscuring a lot of sight lines through it and making it more obstructive, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think the next one even shows it even more.
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying. Like it might not be solid, is what you're saying, but like looking at that, I'm just like, oh my God, no. Like it's scary.
Yeah.
I think it definitely blocks, regardless of how you do it, it's going to block the front of that building.
Yeah.
It's a long, I'm convinced it's a longer footpath, for people to traverse.
Unless they took the stairs, but
unless they took the stairs. So I'm trying
to envision why we would choose this over A. Like, I don't see any advantages to B over A, but
that's kind of where I'm at.
Because Kurt owns a concrete company. I'm just kidding, Kurt. Kurt, I'm only kidding.
Yeah.
I'm only kidding.
I really don't.
Sorry, I know we have limited time, and I do want to get to the visuals, but I just wanted to bring that up because we didn't talk about it.
I appreciate that.
Does other counselors have thoughts on A and B?
I like A.
A. Although I still like the landing of C better than I do the other two.
Yeah, we have
on the
wrong side of the roundabout.
Right?
The wrong side.
On the sunset side. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Renee on that. I do like that landing, but A would be my preference as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
I do like the idea of a more compact curved landing. I think of these pedestrian bridges I've seen that just have like a spiral, like ramp, but where you don't have to go 800 feet to one side and back again, but I don't know. Whatever.
All right, John.
All right.
Take it away.
Yes. Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about now what we call bridge types. That means what type the structure is. It actually has a lot more to do with the bridge than just the way it looks. It's about where you put the material to make the bridge do the work it needs to do and span. But that also impacts how it looks. So I have to ask you to use your imaginations a little bit for this section. We have 5 different ideas of a bridge structural type. The blessing of drawing these in a computer is you can make these sort of 3D models, and it's very helpful and simple. The curse is that it often makes them look a lot more finished and refined than they actually are. So if I could ask you to, first of all, think of these as sort of fat pencil back of the envelope sketches. They're just ideas. Second of all, if you think about these, as you look at these 5 different structural types, whichever of the alignments that we end up choosing, or some variant of those that we talked about, they all have the same basic parts. They have a primary span that goes across the highway. They have, on the library side, they have a landing of some type that Wes just took us through, and that, whatever that is not even shown in these drawings. And then on the high school side, they have the approach spans that take you progressively down, transitioning off of structure onto some sort of mounded up grade, and then down to the ground along some alignment. So these are all drawn in sort of the abstract, but they would all have those parts. So the first would be a basic arch, and there are a lot of different variations and ways to make an arch, but this is one. So you see it's a sort of large 40-foot tall arch. This is drawn just to give you some idea of the aspect ratio across a 200-foot span. The approach span on the high school side is shown as a series of smaller trusses. There's a little bit of mix and match going on here that's possible. As you see some of the other approach spans and some of these other schemes, they could possibly be matched to this span. These aren't all, it's either this one or it's nothing. So a tall arch span, something like this. Kurt, do you want to go down? A lower arch span, or depending technically on how the forces are being resolved, sometimes this is called a bowstring truss. And again, showing a different, a sort of visually simpler kind of approach span, which tends to separate, visually separate the span, the approach, from the piece of the bridge that goes across the highway.
And John, am I right, under this scenario, we'd probably just be looking at simple girder spans on the approach?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So it's pretty simple.
Could I ask a quick question here?
Of course.
So I know we're trying to get a written sign off from ODOT that if we put a pillar in between the north and southbound lanes, it doesn't become an ODOT, federalized project, and it can still be a city project. But I was just curious, in terms of costs and options, can we span the whole highway without putting a pillar in between the south and northbound lanes? And how much does that affect cost? Because obviously you have one less pillar, but then it's a longer span, right?
Good. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I want to let Craig weigh in on that.
So everything you're looking at this evening assumes we would not get that pillar in the middle.
Perfect.
Whereas it's technically possible, there's some ODOT planning and permitting requirements that could derail us in terms of schedule, and they may not actually allow it. So at this point,
best not to go down that road if we don't even need to.
Yeah. Agreed. Thank you.
So basically, everything that we've done to this point, we're looking at basically clear spanning a 200-foot main span. Try to stay as far outside of that as we possibly can.
Yeah, prefab, lift in place, right?
Depending on the alternative, but that's what this is showing here.
Yeah, I think Craig and I are going to touch a little bit in just a couple of slides down on pre-manufactured versus custom manufactured options and advantages and disadvantages.
Okay.
All right, next one, John.
Next one, right? So this is a sort of structural type that relies on some sort of vertical masts and tension cables or tension rods. Makes quite an interesting visual structure across the main highway. And in this case, we're showing the approach spans as something simpler, but visually of the same family as the rest of the bridge.
And is that not the main span, but the accessory? Is that a lower cost type construction? Or are you gonna get into that kind of a little bit about some of the different options?
Yeah, so it's the approach spans are simpler and therefore lower cost than the main span in this case.
Yeah.
They may not be lower than just a simple deck on girder, like we saw in the previous example.
Gotcha.
But we can mix and match, right? Like we could have the deck on girder with this Da Vinci Truss bridge.
Yes.
Correct.
And the same thing with the first one, because I hate
Correct.
that. I hate the approach spans on the first example. They look like a railroad bridge.
Okay.
But I like the arch though. So we can mix and match. That's good.
That's right. Yep, that's right. Yeah, so we can keep going. We're calling this a Da Vinci Truss, just so you know, because there's actually a sketch of a very similar structure to this in one of Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks. And there are maybe a handful of bridges of this type out there that I know of. The photograph you're seeing is of a bridge in France.
Okay.
This is a sort of triangular truss. In this case, the entire bridge is just one smooth arc, which I was definitely thinking of alignment B when I drew this one, when we worked it up, because if you remember on the site plan, it's just one smooth arc. It could be adapted to fit any of the alignments, but it is just a series of springing trussed arches.
But do we really want to copy Portland?
There's all kinds of ways we could make this completely unique to Sherwood. I was just trying to give some precedent examples.
I recognize the picture, that's all.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Right. And then finally, there is an idea that's, we know of examples where the bridge is as simple and quiet, albeit still elegant, as we can possibly make it. And the art that we can engage and find places to put on the bridge becomes really the feature and the signature of the bridge. For example, yeah, for example, this I think you all are probably aware of this bridge in Troutdale that has a really a very distinctive railing that is artwork.
The Dalles, John.
The Dalles, I beg your pardon, not Troutdale. Thank you.
Yeah, I think those are sturgeon.
Those are sturgeon. Okay, right.
Salmon.
So I just want to point out also, though, that in some of the other bridge types, it's not just a simple total mix and match, because, for example, in the arches, most of the material, the steel that holds the bridge up, is above the deck. It's over your head. So that arch is doing, which means the walking surface can be lower because it doesn't need structure below it. And what that means is your bridge is not as high up in the air, your ramps and your approaches are lower and therefore shorter. And there's a bunch of cost trade-offs. In this case, the girders that are going across the highway are probably 6 feet deep, which means that bridge deck has to be about 6 feet higher, or at least 4 or 5 feet higher. And the ramps and approaches have to be longer accordingly. So it's a kind of complex, interrelated set of problems that we're solving.
All right. On to the next one.
Yep. Yeah. And then this is just sort of showing by example, as much as we can generalize, some pre-manufactured options versus some custom options. And many of these bridge types that we talked about, the arches, the bowstring trusses, the girders, can be done by either method in a variety of materials. I think the difference that you can see here is that typically when you do custom design, there's more ability to vary the sections add some finesse, if you will. What you see in the pre-manufactured options along the top is they tend to be sort of perpendicular, constant cross-section or size of member. There's a little more variability and freedom you have in custom. But Craig, could you weigh in on some of your experience with pre-manufactured versus custom manufactured?
Yeah, the pre-manufactured bridge industry is extremely efficient, and they're very capable. All of these, all of the options. I guess we're focusing now on alignment A, but all of the alignments, it's possible to use pre-manufactured or custom design. And from a cost competitive side of things, we found that on the shorter spans, the pre-manufactured, either steel or wood, are generally significantly less expensive than a custom design. On the longer spans, when we get to this 200 feet, they become a little bit more competitive in terms of which way to go. So our plan in the next phase, before we come back to you, is actually to look at both options for these spans, so you get a better idea of the geometry and the design of the main span before you make a selection on which way we go, the preferred option.
And Craig or somebody on the team, I know the mayor was saying that pre-manufacture would just be loaded into place. But I'm looking at the picture of the custom design steel bowstring, and that looks like it's being loaded into place. So is there a difference necessarily in how they're constructed on site?
It would depend on both could be pre-manufactured. Both could be fabricated as one piece and lifted into place. I mean, I don't know if anybody, if you saw the Sullivan's Crossing. It's an I-84 near downtown. It's just been lifted. That's a custom design arch. John and Kurt and I, we worked on that, but it was fabricated off-site and then lifted into place over a weekend. So, so I think in terms of putting it in place, it doesn't really matter whether it's a custom design or a pre-manufactured.
I think what we want to do is avoid is the build in place, like when they do the concrete pour in place or something like that. That would create a whole different animal in terms of construction. A quick question on that custom designed wood arch. Or in wood in general, I mean, what's the durability compared to steel? And what's the lifespan of the product?
We'll give you more information on that when we come back next time. We'll be doing more an investigation on that. I mean, there's been a lot of strides forward in terms of wood preservatives, but there is definitely, I mean, it is a natural material, and it's out in the elements. So we will give you more information on that the next time we come in front of you.
Yeah, because that custom wood arch is beautiful. Yeah.
When I have said what I've said before is what I don't want is the big steel girder sub supports and the port in place, on the main crossing. It's got to be something that is lifted into place. Be it, off the inventory of pre-manufactured, pre-engineered, or custom. Like I said, shorter spans. If you didn't say that the pre-manufactured is the much better way to go, then I would, we would be having words, because that is absolutely going to be the case. But yeah, 200 feet. Yeah, I'm curious to know what the delta, anticipated delta would be.
Sure.
So will we be talking about like design features at some later date, like an entry sign on it that says Sherwood or something? Is that a discussion for later?
Yes. Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
I think we want to get input that's especially where we want to get input from the citizens in the community.
Yeah, and Kristen, I think she's still in the work session. I mean, she's involved because of the cultural arts, and as we get further along, we're going to need to have those conversations. Art will be part of this bridge in some form. It's just a question of where and how, right? Is it going to be part of the design, or is it going to be on the bridge, leading up to the bridge, that kind of thing. And so, but I think we needed to get a little bit more solidity, I guess, I don't know if that's even a word, on the alignment and the type, because then that's going to feed the conversation about those other elements and amenities of the bridge.
Doug's got his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up my continued request for LED lighting, a healthy amount of LED lighting to really show off the bridge at night. So do any of these designs preclude that?
Absolutely not. I mean, there are three aspects of lighting that we're going to need to consider very carefully. One is on the deck for safety, and people using it at night. One is on the approaches and landings, also for safety. And then the third is illuminating the structure itself as a feature for the
That's what I'm
aesthetics.
talking about.
Yeah. Okay. We want to make sure we guard money in the budget to do an adequate job of that.
Yep.
And they do have somebody on the team that is part of the regular team meetings that is focused pretty much solely on lighting and is asking questions and making sure that we're keeping lighting in mind. And as they begin, the proceeding with the designing, making sure that that's factored into.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, as you think about this thing with the big arch in one way or another, it's kind of like a bow, a bow and arrow type of thing. And, I think that's kind of cool potential. If it's a wood or metal or.
We could just stick an arrow going straight up from it.
Yep. Yep.
So we've got about 8 minutes left, and I know I don't think we have very much more. And I think you guys have already done a lot of the work on this slide. So I don't know. I mean, if we want to go over this briefly, or if there's, I guess I want to hear. It sounds like we've got pretty good direction on alignments that you kind of want to take off the table. Are there any bridge design components that you wanted to take off the table, or
Benchy.
The railroad approaches.
Yeah, like Keith mentioned. Yeah.
So
That's fine. Sure.
basically we pull Da Vinci.
No, they're talking about option A,
The first
Kurt,
one.
the tall arch.
Oh, I heard somebody say.
Yeah, I like the
I think
arch.
the
I
mayor
don't.
said
The approaches
Da
look
Vinci.
like a railroad track.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They're reminiscent of a railroad bridge, and
Yeah.
we don't have to do that. Absolutely.
But if from a community, if we're going to do community outreach the next couple of weeks, let people chime in that way. It's okay. Da Vinci, I'm not a fan of Da Vinci.
Me either.
that
Oh, I
was
like it.
one I didn't like either.
Me
Oh,
neither. It's too modern.
Doug, you like it?
I don't like the picture, the actual real life picture, but I like when I look at the span, that you're highlighting right there. I don't like it on the approaches necessarily, but I kind of like the look of the span, but
Well, and it's reminiscent of mountains.
Exactly.
And the one thing I wanted to get feedback and really make sure that as we're having conversations, especially with the public, is some of these may be really neat. I mean, I don't hate the design of this. It's just whether or not it fits with the location that it's going to be, and keeping that in mind too.
Yeah.
Where is it in relation to the high school and the why and all of that. And so I think it's important to get people to think not just about what it looks like, but what it looks like in context with where it's going to be.
Yeah.
The one thing I heard that does concern me is the last one having to be considerably higher potentially, and both the cost component of that, but also then the amount of materials and everything you have to do to build up your approach ranches to get that extra 5 or 6 feet of height. That would concern me.
Good point.
It's kind of plain looking. It doesn't excite me.
Well, it just depends what kind of art you put on it, though.
But I think when you're driving 50 miles an hour under it, I mean, to me, an arch you're going to see from much further away. It's going to be more like striking.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So a different version of Da Vinci might play, but I think it's important to get feedback from the community.
Yeah.
On most of these. This one, the extra 6 feet for me is a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
And frankly, I don't think that that information is, that the public doesn't know or understand what that means, but you guys do. And I think that's a valid and fair concern.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the concern is if you present it to the public and they overwhelmingly love it, but it's not cost effective, then, you know, how does that look?
Yeah. Well,
Well,
just
there's also a concern with, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but that extra 6, does it create an issue with the power lines, having that extra height?
not, so the extra height doesn't make the issue with the power lines any worse than any of the others.
Okay.
And I just want to speak clearly. Yes, when you have girders under the bridge, as opposed to a lot of the structure above the deck, then the deck itself gets a little higher. That said, those girders are simpler in form and would be probably easier to make than, for example, one of the arches. So
what's so from a cost standpoint, you know, maybe it's value. I definitely am concerned about price tags. So
yeah, sure. My point is it's premature to say that just because this pushes the deck higher automatically means it would be more expensive than some of the others. That there are too many other factors at play to conclude that yet.
Okay.
Let's see, do we want to talk next steps real quick?
Sure.
So we're basically getting ready to do the online open house starting on the 21st, which I believe is next Monday.
And I wanted to point out to just give you guys a heads up, we're planning on putting a sign, a temporary sign on the YMCA property, just to kind of, we wanted to have something that just says, this is coming, be excited about it, but also to advertise the open house. And so I wanted to make sure you guys know that that's in the works. And if you have any major concerns or heartburn about that, let me or Keith Campbell know quickly.
Can we put them elsewhere around town too? I want to make sure we're not just getting.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a good, yeah, we wanted it to be like future home of, you know, kind of thing there. And that, you know, that's kind of what we envision with that sign. Yes, we will get signage and website updates and social media all out and around as well. And yeah, I think that's, yeah, we can get some signage in other places just to kind of have people know and chime in. That's a great suggestion.
And for just from your feedback, can, as part of the open house and all that, definitely say, focus on some variant of option A. So engineering can continue to make progress as we, you know, then refine the preferred alternative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost wondering, is there even value, I'm just throwing this out there, is there even value in getting public input on the bridge alignments, or should we just focus on the design elements, right?
Yeah, that's essentially kind of what I was saying.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was hearing. Obviously, we'll need to circle back around with the team probably tomorrow and discuss and get the people that are kind of putting together the online open house, thinking about that. But yeah, if there are things that are completely off the table,
let's take them off the table.
Yeah,
and I was, because I like that idea, because I was also hoping that some of the engineering can get started. That's even though we're still going in parallel with the open house process.
So I'll let maybe Kurt explain. I think some of the engineering though is going to be dependent on
some of it, but not all. Some of it, but not all of it.
And they're already doing, I mean, Kurt, you talk about what you're doing in terms of schedule, and because there is stuff that's going on.
Well, and if we, if we certainly if we are set on an alignment, we can start moving forward with some of that. I think the bridge type itself, actually, though, as I explained earlier, does have an effect on length of ramps. How much clearance, do we need to get, and how much structure depth is there? So I'm not quite sure how to answer that question, to be honest with you.
I guess what I'm saying is, it just, if you're focused on one alignment, it takes the other alignment off the table. And from a overall schedule point of view, the more we can compact, the better.
Okay.
And with the main span, what's the back of the envelope, cost savings of the last option was having a 6 foot higher deck up for the main span versus all the other options where it's a 5 or 6 foot lower deck level. I mean,
Yeah, I think we're going to have to come back to you on that.
Yeah.
so that bit of analysis, how long does that take you guys to know that bit?
So I think the
I
way
don't want to waste a ton of time and energy dealing with the last one if the savings isn't,
So we're planning on coming back next month with a lot, obviously information from the public open house and a lot of more information. And we
Okay.
know that time is of the essence. We know that we want to get this done and constructed and done as absolutely fast as we can. And I guess I just want to acknowledge that. And Kurt, I think probably weekly, if not more, is dealing with me and Bob and Keith Campbell, kind of shaking the schedule. So I think based on this conversation, we need to regroup, have some additional conversations and see whether or not that changes the schedule significantly a little bit and how we can proceed as quickly as we can.
Julia, I really appreciate that. And I know you and the team have really taken that to heart. And I apologize if I'm a broken record on it, but with construction cost increases on a $12 million bridge, it's every month the delay is $70,000, in my mind. So that's the only reason I repeated it. But I know you guys are working hard to get this done fast. So don't take my comments any other way.
Cool.
Thanks. And I think that's it, correct, Kurt?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. Just a little over an hour, but we
Yeah.
started late, so.
I think you guys did great.
Thank you.
I appreciate that and look forward to seeing you guys next month.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Kurt.
All right, with that, we're going to adjourn.